Well, President Biden mentioned there the hundreds of Western companies who've now halted operations in Russia following the invasion of Ukraine. But there remain some big American and European names still operating in the country. However, pressure to pull out is only growing.
For the employees of this Renault plant near Moscow, the news came as a shock. This morning at the start of their shift, they learned the assembly lines are grinding to a halt. A Russian employee appears before the press and explains in French. The plant is closed for an indefinite period. All car production has stopped. It's a 180-degree turnaround on the part of Renault. Just a few days ago, the French car maker said it would continue to produce in Russia despite the sanctions imposed. In the end, the pressure from customers and politicians was too great. Just this Wednesday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to the French National Assembly via video link and appealed to their conscience. French companies must leave the Russian market. Renault, Auchan, Leroy Merlin, and others. They must cease to be sponsors of Russia's military machine, sponsors of the killing of children and women, sponsors of rape, robbery, and looting by the Russian army. All companies must remember once and for all that values are worth more than profit. Yale University in the U.S. has published a Hall of Shame, a list of companies that continue to do unrestricted business in Russia. Among them are the Swiss bank Credit Suisse, Deutsche Telekom, and Chinese computer manufacturer Lenovo. Some companies, such as Nestle and AstraZeneca, are fighting back against the accusations and defending remaining in Russia. They argue that they have a responsibility to continue supplying the Russian people with essential food and medicines.
Well, I've been speaking to Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. He and his team at Yale School of Management have been maintaining a list of companies who've either pulled out or remained in Russia. I asked him if he'd been surprised by the reaction of Western firms to the invasion of Ukraine.
It's amazing how enthusiastically and rapidly they responded. It was across industry sectors and surprised by who moved in what sequence. The choreography has been surprising to have big oil and energy companies on the frontiers of social change is not the normal pattern. And to have the controversial big tech companies engage so quickly. They've been, of course, in a spotlight of a good deal of controversial scrutiny in recent years. And then to have the professional service firms that would usually rather jump off a cliff than engage in public conflict to actually get involved in controversy this early, it was quite remarkable.
Yeah, and has the actual presence of this list made a difference? Because it's been really quite widely distributed and the CEOs of these companies clearly know that this list existed. So has the list been growing because the list exists?
It's interesting, a catalytic effect, or maybe even a snowballing effect, as you mentioned. We didn't anticipate it. We got involved just because we saw the initial dozen or so of the industries that I mentioned walked out and courageously took a moral position, and a dramatic one, to withdraw from Russia. Then there were a lot of pretenders, because the companies that weren't there were the consumer goods companies, packaged goods companies, food companies, apparel, fragrances, companies that usually are on a leading edge of social change, missed the moment. And but then they started their public relations spinmeisters, their various efforts to create smokescreen that was very troubling. So that was a problem. We thought we should maybe be an authoritative source, that we're objective, we have no involvement with any of these particular companies, that we could describe who is really doing something and who is not. And in that process, we wound up creating a catalytic effect of saluting the people who were the first movers, although we didn't necessarily intend to, giving confidence to the next group that wanted to, but was looking around for peer approval, peer affirmation. And then the shaming of the last group, of those who were digging in their heels, refusing to make a change, that had a huge impact.
Yeah, we're just actually seeing some pictures of some of the firms that are digging in, as you've put it, in your list. They're staying in Russia. How are they justifying doing that?
Well, it's through some very unconvincing ways. Some of the oil servicing companies are talking about the importance of what they're providing on humanitarian grounds. No, that's fueling the war effort. Some of the drug companies who have argued, again, a humanitarian argument, which is it's just not true. We don't know what's happening in those labs. We don't know what kind of research is being done. The European and American companies that had oversight on those drug labs don't now, and we don't know how they could be repurposed for any kind of nefarious, biowarfare or whatever. But it's the idea that they're supposedly doing these clinical trials. Those clinical trials could be relocated, and in fact, all but one or two of them did relocate. Sadly, AstraZeneca did not, but their competitors did. But they would argue, I think very unconvincingly, also some of them, Koch Industries of the U.S., that they are a paternalistic employer, which they never had a reputation for being such an employer of choice anywhere else, that now when it comes to Russia, they want to take care of their long service, loyal employees. And we hear that from SC Johnson, a big consumer products firm that makes air fresheners and floor wax and things like that, that they're concerned about the well-being of their employees. If they're concerned about the well-being of their employees, you'd recognize that the average Russian citizen is in great danger if we're on the brink of World War III. This is a way of making sure we're not delivering bombs and bullets to these people, but trying to use the last recourse of peaceful government change.